My ambition was to champion the spirit of ingenuity that put a man on the moon within 10 years. Our aim was to find solutions to repair our planet and provide real hope for the future.
Okay, I need you to hear this clearly, because I think a lot of people are going to try to minimize this story, and I am not going to let that happen. What reportedly took place at Highgrove House was not a misunderstanding. It was not an overstep. It was not a gray area that reasonable people can debate. What it was, reportedly, was a deliberate, repeated use of the King of England's private home, without his knowledge, for commercial personal gain. Say that back to yourself. The King of England, his private home, used without his knowledge. And I want to be very clear about why this matters to us, because I can already hear people saying, "Oh, it's just royal family drama. Who cares?" No. This story matters because it is about something every single one of us knows. And we have all watched someone use a connection, a family name, a borrowed reputation, a relationship they did not earn, to open doors that were never theirs to open. We have all seen it. We have all been quietly furious about it. And we have all wished, at some point, that someone with real authority would finally say enough. That person, reportedly, was Prince William. But before we get to what he did, you need to understand exactly what was taken, and from whom. And listen. If you are new here, now is the time. Hit subscribe. Turn on notifications. Because at a time when so many channels are driven by rumor, outrage, and sentiment, this space is built for something better. Clear thinking, real value, and disciplined analysis of the stories that actually matter. When we take what is happening inside the royal family and we examine it with depth, balance, and perspective. If that is the kind of content you have been looking for, subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Thoughtful discussion is always welcome in the comments. Now, let me set the stage, because context is everything in this story. Tom Parker Bowles is not an anonymous figure. He is a published author, a food critic, a man who has spent years building a reputation in the world of luxury dining and elite culinary culture. And since January of 2023, he became something else entirely, the stepson of the reigning Queen of England. That last detail is the one that matters most for this story. Because in the world Tom moves in, private tastings, exclusive events, high-end brand partnerships, are rooms full of people with more money than most of us will see in a lifetime. Association with the crown is not just a social advantage. It is a commercial asset. It signals, without a single word needing to be spoken, that this person is not like the others. That the doors they walk through are different doors. That the access they carry is worth something. And reportedly, Tom had been converting that access into something very tangible. According to internal sources familiar with the estate's operational records, over a period spanning the better part of a year, private dining events had been hosted at Highgrove House. Not on the grounds, not in a public-facing room that guests occasionally pass through. We are talking about the private rooms. The rooms that communicate simply by appearing in a photograph. I'm that the person hosting you moves inside the actual inner circle of the British monarchy. Every business contact who attended. Every investor who left with a story and a photograph. Every media figure who walked out of one of those evenings with the unmistakable glow of royal adjacency. They were, whether they realized it or not, being sold an association that the owner of that home had never approved. So what exactly was reportedly happening inside those private rooms? Stay with me, because this is where it stops being about a name on a guest list. The pattern, as reportedly described by sources close to the estate, was not casual. This was not a son stopping by his stepfather's house for a dinner and things getting slightly out of hand. This was a recurring, reportedly organized series of curated culinary showcases, the kind of events where invitations carry weight, where the venue itself is part of the value proposition, where the whole point is the association being made in that room. Staff at the estate had reportedly been operating under instructions that were not written in plain language, but were understood with perfect clarity. Do not bring this to the king's attention. And in a household built on centuries of hierarchy and deference, that kind of instruction does not need to be shouted. It only needs to be said once, in the right voice, by someone positioned above you. The paperwork that reportedly authorized the access was careful, strategic, deliberately vague. One internal document reportedly described the arrangement using the phrase "family directive," 4 words chosen. It appears to create the impression of royal approval without actually obtaining it. Any staff member reading that phrase would assume it had come from the top. It had not. Not from the king. Not from anyone formally authorized to speak in his name. That is not a misunderstanding. That is a mechanism, a deliberately constructed mechanism for borrowing legitimacy that was never on offer. And here is the thing that makes this so much worse. King Charles wasn't just unaware. Reportedly, he was being actively kept in the dark by someone inside his own household. Now I want to stop here for a moment because I think this point gets lost in the noise whenever this kind of story breaks. People focus on the property. They talk about protocol violations. They reach for the legal language, and they miss the human reality underneath all of it. Highgrove is not just a royal property. It is not a piece of real estate assigned to Charles by virtue of his position. He chose that house. He has tended those gardens for over 30 years. The walled garden, the wildflower meadow, the organic farm. Every inch of those grounds reflects a philosophy he has been building and defending publicly and privately for most of his adult life. His environmental vision, his connection to land, history, and living things. The organic principles he advocated for when it was unfashionable to do so. That place is the most personal thing he has ever built. It is, in a very real and documented sense, the most honest expression of who he is outside of his public role. To use that place, those rooms, that name, that history, for commercial gain, without his knowledge, while making sure he would not find out, that is not a protocol violation. That is a betrayal. And I do not use that word lightly. To use that place for profit while making sure he did not know, that was a deliberate choice. And it was about to catch up with someone. Prince William was not naive about what was happening. He had been watching, not with hostility, not with the restless energy of someone looking for a fight, with the patient, careful attention of someone who understands exactly how institutions fail. And here is the thing about William that I think often gets underestimated. He is a student of institutional erosion. He has watched, up close, for years, what happens when powerful families allow exceptions to harden into precedent, and when people in proximity to the crown begin to treat access as an entitlement rather than a responsibility, when no one draws the line because drawing the line is uncomfortable. He had watched what the cost of that looked like. He was not going to let it happen again. The signals he reportedly picked up were not dramatic individually. A reference in a trade publication to private royal estate access. A pattern in staff movements that raised quiet questions. A phrase in a document. That phrase again, family directive. That a trained institutional eye would read very differently from a deferential household member. Individually, each thing could be explained. Collectively, they told a story that William understood immediately. He could have gone to the press. One call, one careful, an anonymous call, and this story would have erupted. It would have been a headline within 24 hours. He did not make that call, and the reason why tells you everything about who William actually is. What he reportedly did instead was commission a quiet internal review, framed from the outside as a routine estate management audit, the kind of administrative procedure that no one raises an eyebrow at because no one is meant to, targeted from the inside at exactly the right records. The team conducting it reported directly to William. The findings were sealed. And what came back over the course of several weeks was not one smoking document. It was a pattern. Dozens of individually explainable entries that, laid side by side in chronological order, became something that could not be dismissed or reframed. Multiple uses of restricted residential spaces. Commercial activity conducted under the shelter of implied royal association. Staff instructions that bypassed standard authorization protocols. And, most critically, that paperwork, with its carefully chosen, strategically vague language designed to silence questions before they were asked. The staff members who testified reportedly did so with visible relief. These were people who had known something was wrong and had been put in the impossible position of being expected to stay silent about it. William reportedly made sure they were protected. He did not rush. He built the case the right way because he understood something the people who exploited the system had apparently not considered. When you protect institutions through proper process, you strengthen them. When you protect them through noise and drama, you weaken them, even as you appear to win. When the documents were complete, William sat with them. 2 days, no calls, no leaks, no signals sent in any direction. And then he made a decision that would change everything. Here is what I want you to really sit with, because this is the moral center of the entire story, and it is not the one most people focus on. Yes, Tom Parker Bowles made a moral choice when he reportedly used Highgrove. Yes, whoever enabled those so-called approvals made a moral choice. Those choices matter. But the most important moral choice in this entire story was not theirs. It was William's, because William could have looked away. He could have decided this was a family matter, too complicated, too politically costly, too likely to blow back on him in ways that would be difficult to manage. He could have said, privately, "This is not my problem to solve." He could have taken the path that protects everyone's comfort, his own included. That path was available to him. And it would have been easier. He chose the harder thing. He chose accountability, not for the cameras, not for the headlines, not to score points or to make someone look bad in public, for the institution, for the staff who had been placed in an impossible position. For the idea, the fundamental structural idea, that rules are not decorative. They are not suggestions for people without the right connections. They are structural. They hold the whole thing up, remove them selectively for the powerful and the connected, and eventually the entire thing comes down. I want to say that again because I think it deserves to land. Rules that bend for the powerful eventually break for everyone. And there are very few people in the world with both the knowledge to see that happening and the courage to actually stop it when it costs them something personally. He gave the findings directly to King Charles. No spin, no framing designed to make Camilla look terrible or Tom look like a cartoon villain. Just the facts, the documents, the dates, the access logs, the staff testimonies from people who had been afraid to speak and were finally, quietly, protected enough to tell the truth. And Charles's response? Cold, measured, absolute. What followed was not a public spectacle. It was something arguably more significant. A formal, institutional response from a king who understood precisely what had been done and what it meant. The findings reportedly confirmed what the investigation had built, piece by piece. Unauthorized commercial use of a private royal residence, the deliberate manufacture of implied royal consent, staff who had been instructed to facilitate it and stay silent, and at the center of it all, a pattern of entitlement that had been allowed to expand, quietly, incrementally, one unchallenged assumption at a time, until it became a full breach. Charles's response was not emotional. It carried something colder and more permanent than anger. The measured clarity of a man who has spent a lifetime understanding that the weight of the crown is not just ceremonial. It is real. And anyone who treats it as a resource to be borrowed without authorization is not just crossing a line. They are undermining something that cannot be rebuilt once it has been sufficiently eroded. The formal consequences were delivered through the proper channels. Documented, final. And here is the question that does not get asked loudly enough. What does this mean for Camilla? Because William's action did not just expose Tom, it placed a decision in front of the king about his wife, about the household she had been trusted to help steward, about the judgment she had exercised or failed to exercise regarding her own son. That question does not resolve neatly, and the effects of it are still unfolding inside that family right now. I want to close with something that I genuinely believe, not just about this story, but about what this story represents. We live in a world full of people protecting their own comfort, people who see something wrong and calculate the personal cost of saying so and decide quietly that it is not worth it, that someone else will handle it, that the institution will self-correct, that speaking up only makes things harder for you without making them meaningfully better for anyone else. William reportedly looked at exactly that calculation. He ran those numbers. He knew what the cost was: family tension, political complexity, the risk of being seen as the one who created the problem rather than solved it. He knew all of it, and he decided that principle is not something you hold privately while doing nothing with it. Principle without action is not principle. It is just preference, or a comfortable way of feeling good about yourself without paying anything for it. Some institutions are only as strong as the people willing to defend them when it is genuinely costly to do so. The monarchy is one of them. Your workplace is one of them. Your family, in its own way, is one of them. And the moments when someone with the ability to act actually chooses to act, for the right reasons, through the right channels, without making it about themselves, those are the moments that determine what kind of institution survives. William chose the harder right over the easier wrong. And whether you are watching this from New York or Lagos or London, that is a story worth paying attention to. Tell me in the comments, because I genuinely want to know, would you have done the same? If it was your family, your name, are your relationships at stake? Would you have built that case? Or would the pressure have been too much? This story is not over. The consequences are still unfolding. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next, because the next chapter of this is the one nobody is talking about yet. And trust me, you are going to want to be here for it. Moral: principle without courage is just preference, and some institutions are only as strong as the people willing to defend them when it costs something real to do so.